Before you close your eyes tonight, let me take you back to Hawkins, Indiana, one last time. The final season of Stranger Things is coming, and tonight we're going to explore the mysteries that remain, the questions left unanswered, and the theories that might just explain everything. Get comfortable, dim the lights, and let's wander through the Upside Down together as we unravel what Season 5 might have in store for us. No loud noises, no jump scares, just calm speculation, gentle theorizing, and a journey through one of the most beloved shows of our generation. Whether you are here to fall asleep or simply relax, you're in the right place. So settle in, and let's begin our exploration of what may be the final chapter in the story of Hawkins' unlikely heroes. Let's start at the beginning of the end. Theory 1. The time loop paradox. One of the most intriguing theories circulating about Season 5 involves the concept of time itself. Throughout the series, we've seen hints that time in the Upside Down doesn't work the way it does in our world. Remember how Will described time feeling different when he was trapped there? How the Upside Down seemed frozen in time, stuck on the day Will disappeared. This theory suggests that the entire series might exist within a temporal loop, and Season 5 will reveal that everything we've watched has happened before, possibly multiple times. Think about it for a moment. The Duffer Brothers have always been meticulous with their foreshadowing, planting seeds seasons in advance that only bloom when you look back. Consider Vecna's reveal in Season 4. He told Nancy that he was there at the beginning, that he's been watching. But what if his presence goes even deeper than we realised? What if the reason the Upside Down is frozen on November 6, 1983, isn't just because that's when 11 opened the gate, but because that date represents a critical point in a recurring cycle? The clock imagery that dominated Season 4 wasn't just about countdown to death. It could be about time itself being broken. Every time the grandfather clock chimes 4 times, it could represent the 4 seasons we've witnessed, each one a loop attempting to break free from a predetermined cycle. The 4th chime brings death, but what if there's a 5th chime we haven't heard yet? A chime that represents Season 5 and the breaking of the loop entirely. Let's think about the evidence scattered throughout the series. In Season 1, Joyce's Christmas lights spelled out messages, manipulating light itself to communicate across dimensions. Light, as we know from physics, is intimately connected with time. When you look at a star, you're looking back in time. The light alphabet wasn't just communication, it was a hint about time's malleability. Then there's Eleven's abilities. She doesn't just have telekinesis and telepathy, she can access memories, both her own and others. In Season 2, she entered her mother's fractured mind and saw the past. But memories aren't just recordings, they're reconstructions. And in a world where dimensions overlap, who's to say memories and time aren't more fluid than we think? The Rainbow Room, where 11 and the other children were trained, showed us that there were others with abilities. What if some of those children had time-related powers that we haven't fully explored yet? What if one of them tried to use their abilities to prevent the disasters we've seen, only to discover that their intervention is what caused those disasters in the first place? A classic bootstrap paradox where effect becomes cause. Think about how many times our heroes have narrowly escaped death. Hopper's miraculous survival in the Russian prison. Max's brief death and resurrection. The countless close calls that seemed almost too lucky. What if someone is manipulating time, creating subtle changes in each loop to keep our core group alive, trying to find the one timeline where everyone survives and Vecna is defeated permanently? This would explain the strange feeling many fans have noted, that certain plot points feel destined, inevitable, as if they're being pulled along predetermined tracks. The relationships that form, the sacrifices made, the battles fought. What if they're echoes of previous loops with slight variations each time? The theory deepens when we consider the Mind Flayer's nature. It's described as ancient, existing before humanity, before perhaps even the concept of linear time as we understand it. What if the Mind Flayer exists outside of time, perceiving all moments simultaneously? It would explain its seemingly omniscient moves, always appearing to be one step ahead. Not because it can see the future, but because it exists in all times at once. And Vecna, being connected to the Mind Flayer, might share this temporal perception to some degree. His lair filled with clocks isn't just aesthetic, It's a hint that he's aware of time's true nature in the Upside Down. When he kills his victims, he's not just taking their lives in the present, he's erasing them from the timeline, creating tears in reality that threaten to unravel everything. Season 5 could reveal that Will, the boy who started it all, has a special role in this temporal puzzle. His sensitivity to the Upside Down, his ability to feel when it's near, might not just be because he was taken there. It might be because he's somehow tied to the moment the loop begins. Every loop starts with Will's disappearance. Break that cycle, prevent that disappearance, and perhaps you unravel the entire loop. But here's the tragic beauty of this theory. Maybe our heroes have succeeded before. Maybe in previous loops they've won, defeated Vecna, closed the gates. But winning isn't enough. As long as the loop exists, everything resets. The victory is temporary, the peace illusory. They wake up back in 1983 with no memory of what came before, doomed to fight the same battle again and again. Season 5's endgame, then, wouldn't just be defeating Vecna or closing the gates. It would be breaking the loop itself, ensuring that this victory, this sacrifice, this struggle means something permanent. It would mean some of our heroes might need to retain memories across the loop boundary, becoming temporal anchors that prevent the reset. The cost of saving Hawkins might be remembering every loss, every death, every failure across multiple timelines, a burden almost too heavy to bear. Imagine the final scene, our heroes victorious, Hawkins saved, but one of them, perhaps 11, perhaps Will, standing apart, eyes filled with the weight of memories that the others don't share. They've seen this moment before, celebrated this victory before, only to watch it slip away. But this time, something is different. This time, the loop is broken, and they carry the knowledge of all the loops alone, unable to share it, unable to explain why they weep even in victory. The time loop theory transforms Stranger Things from a story about fighting monsters into a meditation on fate, choice, and the burden of memory. It suggests that heroism isn't just about winning once, but about the willingness to fight the same battle repeatedly. Even if you can't remember the previous attempts, it's about the residue that courage leaves behind, echoes that ripple through time even when conscious memory fades. As you drift off to sleep, think about time not as a river flowing in one direction, but as a vast ocean where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Think about how many times you've felt déjà vu, that strange sensation of having lived a moment before. What if those aren't just tricks of memory, but glimpses through the thin veil of linear time into other iterations of your life, other loops you've lived through? In the Upside Down, time is broken, and maybe, just maybe, fixing time is the key to fixing everything else. Theory 2. The Russian connection and the Cold War that never ended. Let's drift now into another theory, one grounded not in supernatural physics but in the very real history of Cold War paranoia and secret experiments. This theory suggests that the Russians know far more about the Upside Down than we've been shown, and that their involvement will be central to Season 5's resolution. Throughout the series, the Russian subplot has felt both essential and mysterious. Why were they so interested in opening a gate? How did they learn about the Upside Down in the first place? And most importantly, what are they still planning? Consider what we know. The Russians successfully opened their own gate to the Upside Down beneath Starcourt Mall. They had detailed knowledge of the process, sophisticated equipment, and were clearly following a specific protocol. This wasn't a first attempt. Their efficiency suggested they'd been working on this for years, possibly decades. The question is, where did they get their information? Here's where the theory gets interesting. What if there was an American defector, a scientist from Hawkins' lab, who escaped with knowledge of the Upside Down and sold that information to the Soviets? We know Hawkins' lab was conducting experiments long before 11 opened the first gate. We know there were other test subjects, other children with abilities. What if one of the scientists, disillusioned or desperate, took that research behind the Iron Curtain? This would explain the Russians' sophisticated understanding of dimensional physics. They weren't stumbling around in the dark. They had a blueprint provided by someone who'd seen the inside of Hawkins' lab. And if that's true, then the Russians might know about aspects of the Upside Down that even our heroes haven't discovered yet. Think about Hopper's time in the Russian prison camp. He was kept alive for a reason. The Russians didn't just capture any American, they specifically held onto someone who'd been at ground zero of the Upside Down events. They questioned him, studied him, possibly even experimented on him. What did they learn? What did they want from him? There's also the matter of Dmitri, the guard who helped Hopper escape. His character was introduced with clear purpose, but we never fully explored his motivations or background. What if Dmitri wasn't just a guard with a good heart? What if he was placed there specifically to extract information from Hopper, to win his trust and learn everything he knew about the Upside Down? His betrayal of Russia might have been the plan all along. Get Hopper to trust him, escape together, and maintain a presence close to the Hawkins group. Season 5 could reveal that Russia has been building something far more dangerous than a simple gate. What if they've been creating their own version of 11, a Soviet psychic warrior trained specifically to navigate and control the Upside Down? The Cold War never ended in this theory. It simply moved to a new battlefield, one that exists in the spaces between dimensions. The historical context enriches this theory. The real Cold War was characterized by proxy battles, by superpowers fighting through smaller conflicts in other nations. In Stranger Things, the Upside Down becomes the ultimate proxy battlefield. Instead of fighting on Earth, where mutually assured destruction limits both sides, they fight in a dimension where the usual rules don't apply. The stakes are impossibly high, but the battlefield is removed from civilian populations. At least that was the idea before the gates started merging worlds. We must also consider the Chernobyl disaster of 1986, which happened between the events we've seen and what's to come. While Chernobyl was in Ukraine, not Russia, the Soviet Union's handling of the disaster showed a willingness to sacrifice lives for secrecy and strategic advantage. What if the disasters we've seen in Stranger Things were themselves test runs for something larger? What if the Mind Flayer's emergence, the gate openings, even the Star-Court battle were all monitored by Russian intelligence, gathering data for a final massive operation? There's a beautiful symmetry in this theory that aligns with the show's 1980s setting. The decade was defined by nuclear anxiety, by the fear that human ambition might destroy the world. The Upside Down becomes a metaphor for that anxiety, a dark reflection of our world, poisoned and dead, showing us what happens when powers play with forces they don't understand. The monsters become stand-ins for nuclear weapons, powerful, destructive, and ultimately uncontrollable once released. Yuri, the smuggler who helped in Season 4, represents another piece of this puzzle. He's a man who exists between worlds, between loyalties, motivated purely by profit. His knowledge of secret routes, of hidden facilities, suggests a vast underground network that we've only glimpsed. What if that network extends further than we know? What if there are routes not just between countries, but between dimensions, pathways that the Russians have been mapping while our heroes focused on closing gates? The theory suggests Season 5 will force our heroes to make an uncomfortable choice. Work with the Russians against a common threat, or fight a two-front war against both Vecna and Soviet forces. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, but what happens when that friend is an oppressive regime with its own dark agenda? It's a morally complex scenario that would fit perfectly with Stranger Things' coming-of-age themes. The kids are growing up, and growing up means realising the world isn't divided into simple heroes and villains. Imagine a scene where Hopper must sit across from a Russian general, negotiating terms, knowing that cooperation might save Hawkins but could also give Russia the keys to dimensional travel. The weight of that decision, the impossibility of knowing which choice leads to less harm, that's the burden of adulthood, and it could be where Season 5 takes our characters. Dr. Brenner's death in Season 4 removed one of the few people who truly understood the science behind the Upside Down. His knowledge died with him, leaving a gap. Who fills that gap? The theory proposes that we'll meet a Russian scientist who knows as much as Brenner did, possibly because they worked together before ideological differences or personal betrayal drove them apart. Two scientists who once collaborated, now on opposite sides of a supernatural Cold War. It's operatic in its tragedy. The pacing of this revelation could unfold slowly in Season 5. Early episodes might show strange activity in Russia, government meetings we don't understand, military movements that seem disconnected from Hawkins. Then, as the season progresses, we'd see how these threads connect. a Russian gate opening simultaneously with Vecna's final assault, creating a three-way collision of forces that threatens to tear reality apart completely. Our heroes caught in the middle, trying to protect their home while powers far larger than them play their games. There's also the question of what the Russians want. World domination is too simple, too cartoonish. More likely, they want control. Control over the Upside Down's resources, its creatures, its strange physics. In a world where energy is power, a dimension of infinite darkness could be an infinite energy source. Or perhaps they've discovered something else there, something that changes the equation of global power so completely that possessing it would end the Cold War decisively in their favour. Murray, the conspiracy theorist who turned out to be right about so many things, could play a crucial role in unravelling this Russian connection. He speaks the language, understands the culture, and has spent years studying Soviet operations. If anyone can infiltrate Russian plans or negotiate with their operatives, it's Murray. Season 5 might see him stepping from comic relief to vital player, his paranoia validated. As the conspiracy he always suspected proves to be real and even more vast than he imagined. As you rest now, let your mind wander through those secret facilities, those underground bunkers where scientists in white coats study things they shouldn't. Think about the Cold War not as history but as prologue, a conflict that never truly ended but merely transformed, moving from visible battlefields to invisible ones, from nuclear weapons to dimensional rifts. And in the centre of it all, a small town in Indiana, ground zero for a war that most people don't even know is happening. The Russian connection theory reminds us that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't supernatural. They're human ambition, human cruelty, human willingness to sacrifice others for power. The Upside Down didn't make humans cruel, it just gave them a new arena to express cruelty that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. Theory 3. Eleven's ultimate sacrifice and the cost of power. Now we turn to perhaps the most emotionally resonant theory of all. The idea that Eleven's journey has always been leading toward a final devastating choice. This theory proposes that to truly defeat Vecna and seal the Upside Down forever, Eleven will have to sacrifice her powers, her connection to that other world, and possibly even her memories of everything that's happened. It's a theory about the cost of heroism and what we're willing to lose to save those we love. From the very beginning, Eleven's arc has been about identity. Who is she beyond her powers? Is she just a weapon, a tool created by Hawkins' lab? Or is she a person with agency, with desires, with the right to a normal life? Every season has pushed this question further, and Season 5 must provide the answer. Consider the trajectory. Season 1 showed us a girl who barely understood humanity, who had been raised as an experiment. Season 2 explored her anger and her search for belonging. Season 3 began her journey toward normalcy, with mole trips and boyfriend troubles. Season 4 dove deep into her origin, revealing the darkness from which she came and the power she wields. Each season has built upon the last, showing Eleven growing more human even as her power grows more vast. But there's a pattern of loss too. Every time Eleven uses her full power, she loses something. After closing the gate in Season 1, she vanished for months. After Season 2's climax, she was exhausted, drained. Season 3's battle left her powerless for an extended period. Season 4 showed her struggling to reclaim what she'd lost. The message is clear. Power comes at a cost, and that cost keeps increasing. This theory suggests that Vecna understands something fundamental about Eleven's abilities that even she doesn't fully grasp. Her power comes from the same source as his, from the Upside Down itself. When Eleven opened the first gate, she didn't just create a doorway, she became a doorway, a living conduit between dimensions. That's why she can access the Upside Down mentally, why she can sense when it's near, why her abilities are so uniquely suited to fighting its threats. She's connected to it at a fundamental level. The sacrifice theory proposes that the only way to truly seal the Upside Down is to close that conduit, and the conduit is Eleven herself. Not her death, but something perhaps harder, the complete severing of her connection to her powers. She would have to willingly cut herself off from the very thing that makes her special, becoming ordinary, losing the abilities that have defined her entire existence. Think about what that means for her character. Eleven has never known a life without powers. They've been her burden and her gift, her curse and her salvation. They've made her a target, but also given her purpose. To lose them would be to lose the foundation of her identity. Who is 11 without telekinesis? Who is Jane Hopper if she can't protect the people she loves? But here's the deeper question. Would losing her powers mean losing her memories too? The theory suggests that her powers and her memories are intertwined, that the neural pathways that allow her to move objects with her mind are the same pathways where her memories are stored. To close one might mean closing the other. She might wake up after the final battle as Jane Hopper, adopted daughter of Jim Hopper, with no memory of Hawkins' lab, of her friends, of the Upside Down, of Mike. A clean slate, a normal life, but at the cost of everything that made that life meaningful. The tragedy of this scenario is exquisite. 11 has fought so hard to build connections, to create a family, to find love. The relationship with Mike has been her anchor to humanity, the thing that taught her she could be more than a weapon. To lose those memories would be to lose the emotional journey we've watched for 4 seasons. She'd be safe, normal, happy, but unaware of the price she paid for that happiness. Mike would remember, though. That's what makes this theory so heartbreaking. He'd remember their first dance at the snowball, their kiss, their confessions of love. He'd remember her sacrifice, and he'd have to live with knowing that when he looks at her, she doesn't remember any of it. He'd have to fall in love with her again, slowly, carefully, hoping that somewhere deep in her subconscious, some echo of what they had remains. There's precedent for this kind of ending. Terry Ives, 11's mother, lost her mind to Brenner's experiments, her memories trapped in a loop, her consciousness shattered. 11 risked becoming like her mother when she went too deep into Billy's mind in season 3. The show has consistently suggested that the mind is fragile, that pushing it too far can break it irreparably. A sacrifice of memory would be thematically consistent with what we've already seen. This theory also addresses a practical concern. What happens to 11 after the show ends? If she keeps her full powers, she becomes too powerful a tool to be left alone. Governments would want to study her, use her, control her. She'd never truly be free. But if she loses her powers, she can disappear into normalcy, become just another girl in just another town. It would be a bittersweet, but ultimately hopeful ending. She loses everything special about herself, but gains the one thing she's always wanted, the chance to be normal. The other children from Hawkins' lab provide context for this theory. Each of them had powers, and each of them seemed to be consumed by them in different ways. Kaylee used hers for revenge, lost in anger. The others in the rainbow room were killed, their potential snuffed out. 8 seemed to be constantly searching for more, never satisfied. 11 is the only one who's tried to build a life beyond her abilities, who's tried to be human first and superhuman second. In the laboratory, Brenner once told 11 that she, was destined for greatness, that her powers made her special. But maybe the real lesson is that powers don't make you special. Choices do. Humanity does. Love does. The willingness to sacrifice what makes you powerful for the sake of those who can't protect themselves, that's what makes a hero. If 11 can make that choice, give up everything she is for the world she loves, then she proves that she was never just a number, never just an experiment. She's human in the most profound way possible. There's another layer to consider. What if 11's sacrifice creates a paradox? If she loses her powers and her memories, does she remember that she needs to avoid the circumstances that gave her powers in the first place? Or does the timeline loop back, with baby Jane, 11, still taken by Brenner, still experimented on, still becoming the girl with powers, because without those powers, she never could have saved the world, so the timeline preserves itself by ensuring the powers exist. It's a causal loop. She has to have powers to save the world, but saving the world requires losing the powers. So the universe conspires to give her those powers again. She's trapped in an eternal cycle of gaining and losing, remembering and forgetting, perhaps across multiple timelines. The emotional weight of this theory is staggering. Imagine the final episode, 11 saying goodbye to each of her friends, knowing they'll remember her but she won't remember them. Imagine her holding Mike's hand, memorizing his face, telling him it's okay, that this is what she wants. Imagine the moment she closes her eyes, reaches out with her mind one last time and severs the connection, the power draining away, the memories fading like dreams upon waking, and then her eyes opening, confused, wondering where she is and why everyone around her is crying. Or perhaps there's a middle ground. Perhaps she loses most of her powers but retains a small spark, just enough to occasionally sense when something is wrong, just enough to have vivid dreams of a girl with a shaved head and blood running from her nose, just enough to keep the door open for memories to slowly return, not all at once, but gradually, painfully, beautifully. A reverse of her origin story. Instead of a girl with powers learning to be human, a human girl slowly remembering she used to be powerful. As you drift towards sleep, think about sacrifice. Think about what you would give up to protect the people you love. Your talents, your memories, your very identity. Would you unmake yourself to save others? 11 might have to answer that question. And in answering it, she might teach us something profound about what it means to be a hero. Not the power to destroy monsters, but the courage to destroy the monster fighter within yourself if that's what it takes to bring peace. The theory of 11's ultimate sacrifice reminds us that sometimes the cost of victory is losing the very thing that made victory possible, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is willingly forget why you're brave. Theory 4. Will Byers' true purpose and the upside down's origin. Let's float now into a theory that brings us full circle, back to where it all began, with Will Byers in the upside down. This theory suggests that Will wasn't randomly chosen by the Demogorgon in that first episode. He was specifically selected, targeted because of something unique about him, something that makes him the key to understanding what the upside down truly is and how it came to be. Throughout the series, Will has been treated as somewhat passive, a victim more than an agent. But what if that's been misdirection? What if Will's connection to the upside down isn't just a scar from trauma, but something deeper, something that existed before that night in 1983? This theory proposes that Will has always been connected to the upside down, that he's always had a role to play in this story, and that Season 5 will finally reveal why the Demogorgon chose him. Let's examine the evidence. Will survived in the upside down for an entire week with minimal resources. He evaded the Demogorgon, found hiding places, even managed to communicate with his mother through lights and electronics. For a 12-year-old child, that's remarkable. Yes, he was resourceful and brave, but the theory asks, was it just resourcefulness, or did he have an innate understanding of that place? Some subconscious knowledge that helped him navigate its dangers? When Will returned in Season 1, he brought something back with him. Not just psychological trauma, but a physical connection. He coughed up that slug creature. He had episodes where he'd flash into the upside down. Even after being cured, he retained a sensitivity to the mind flayer that no one else had. He could feel it approaching before anyone else could. He was like an early warning system, but more than that, he was like someone attuned to a frequency others couldn't hear. Season 2 deepened this connection when the mind flayer possessed him. But here's what's interesting. The possession wasn't complete. Will fought it. He retained his consciousness even when the entity tried to control him. He found ways to communicate, to warn his friends, to resist. Compare this to Billy's possession in Season 3. Billy was almost entirely subsumed, barely aware of himself beneath the mind flayer's control. Why was Will able to resist when Billy couldn't? This theory offers an answer. Will can resist because he and the upside down are fundamentally compatible. The mind flayer wasn't trying to destroy Will's consciousness, it was trying to merge with it. It recognized something in Will, some quality or potential, that made him a perfect vessel. The possession failed not because Will was too strong, but because the mind flayer was trying to force a connection that should have been natural. Trying to take by force what it could have had through cooperation. So, what is this quality that makes Will special? The theory gets metaphysical here. It proposes that Will is what's called a sensitive, someone whose consciousness naturally exists partially in multiple dimensions. Most people are firmly anchored in this reality, their awareness bounded by the physical laws of our universe. But sensitives have consciousness that bleeds through, that touches other dimensions without meaning to. It's not a superpower like 11's abilities, it's more subtle, more passive, but it makes Will a bridge between worlds. If this is true, then the upside down didn't create Will's sensitivity. His sensitivity drew the upside down to him. like attracts like. The Demogorgon was attracted to him the same way sharks smell blood in water. It sensed that Will was different, that taking him into the Upside Down wouldn't just be capturing prey, it would be bringing someone home. But the theory goes even deeper. What if the Upside Down itself was created by someone like Will? Not Will himself, the timeline doesn't work, but someone in the past with similar abilities. Someone whose consciousness was so strong, whose sensitivity to other dimensions was so acute, that their thoughts, their fears, their nightmares became manifest. They literally dreamed a dimension into existence, a dark reflection of our world shaped by their psyche. This would explain why the Upside Down looks like Hawkins. It's not a separate dimension that happens to mirror ours. It's a psychic projection, a thought made real. And it's frozen on November 6th, 1983, because that's when 11 opened the gate, when the psychic projection was fixed by contact with a powerful telekinetic force. Before that, maybe it was more fluid, more changeable, but the gate opening crystallized it, locked it into that specific form. If someone in the past created the Upside Down through their consciousness, then Will being a sensitive means he has the potential to do the same thing, or to undo what was done. He could be the key to destroying the Upside Down, not through force, but through understanding, by accessing the same creative, destructive power that brought it into being and using it to unmake what should never have been made. Season 4 gave us tantalizing hints. Will's connection to Vecna was established but not fully explored. He could sense when Vecna was active, could feel the Upside Down's presence even from California. And his conversation with Mike in the van, where he talked about feeling like a mistake, like he doesn't fit in, that could be more than adolescent angst. It could be the echo of someone who exists between worlds, who doesn't fully belong in either, who feels the constant pull of somewhere else. The painting he made for Mike, showing the party as heroes with 11 in the centre, could be prophetic rather than just artistic. What if Will has some degree of precognition, the ability to sense future events because his consciousness isn't bound by linear time? The painting shows what will happen, shows 11 leading them to victory because Will has already seen it in that space between dimensions where past, present and future exist simultaneously. There's also the question of Will's sexuality, which the show has been subtly exploring. His feelings for Mike, his struggle with identity, his sense of being different. The theory suggests this isn't separate from his Upside Down connection, but related to it. Being a sensitive, existing between worlds, might manifest in all areas of his life, including his sense of self. He doesn't fit neatly into categories, not fully in this world, not fully in that one, not clearly one identity or another. He exists in liminal spaces, on thresholds, in the boundaries between things. And that's exactly what makes him powerful. The theory proposes that Season 5 will see Will coming into his power, finally stepping from the sidelines to the centre. He'll realise that his sensitivity isn't a weakness, but a gift, that his ability to exist between dimensions makes him the only one who can truly navigate the space where the Upside Down and our world meet. 11 has raw power, but Will has understanding. Together, they could accomplish what neither could alone, 11 providing the force and Will providing the direction. Imagine a scene where Will stands at the border between dimensions, literally with one foot in each world. The Upside Down pulls at him, tries to claim him fully, while his friends and family anchor him to this reality. He's stretched between them, pulled in both directions, and he has to choose. Not which world to exist in, but how to exist in both simultaneously, without being torn apart. It's a metaphor for anyone who's ever felt split between different aspects of their identity, different communities, different selves. And in choosing to embrace both rather than reject one, he might find the synthesis that saves everyone. The Mind Flayer would be drawn to Will again, but this time Will would be ready. Instead of being possessed, he'd meet it on equal terms, consciousness to consciousness. They'd have a conversation, maybe not in words, but in pure thought, pure intention. And maybe Will would learn that the Mind Flayer isn't evil in any human sense. It's alien, operating on logic we don't understand, pursuing goals that look like malevolence but might be something else entirely. What if the Mind Flayer is trying to merge the dimensions not to destroy our world, but because it's the only way to save its own? The Upside Down is dying, collapsing, and the only way to preserve the life forms there is to combine the dimensions, creating a new hybrid reality. It's still a threat because that merging would destroy our world as we know it. But it's not motivated by hatred, it's motivated by survival. And maybe Will, understanding both worlds, could negotiate a third way, a solution that preserves both dimensions without destroying either. The origin of the Upside Down is crucial to this theory. If it was psychically created, then it can be psychically altered or even destroyed. But destruction might not be the answer. Maybe the answer is transformation, turning the Upside Down from a dark mirror into something else, something that can exist alongside our world without threatening it. And maybe only someone who belongs to both worlds can envision what that transformation would look like. As you settle deeper into rest, think about Will Byers, the boy who started it all. Think about how he's been overlooked, underestimated, kept to the side. Think about how sometimes the quietest people have the deepest waters, the most to offer if anyone bothers to look beneath the surface. Will's journey has always been about finding his voice, claiming his space, accepting who he is. And in Season 5, that journey might culminate in him becoming not just a survivor but a saviour, not through power, but through understanding, through the unique perspective that comes from existing between worlds. The theory of Will's true purpose reminds us that sometimes the most important people aren't the strongest or the loudest. They're the ones who understand nuance, who see connections others miss, who exist in the spaces between, and can therefore bridge gaps that seem uncrossable. Will Byers might be the real hero of this story, not despite his sensitivity, but because of it. Theory 5. The happy ending. That isn't our final theory for tonight is perhaps the most unsettling because it asks us to question the very nature of reality within the Stranger Things universe. This theory proposes that Season 5 won't end with a traditional victory, but rather with a revelation that changes everything we thought we understood about the series. It suggests that the happy ending might actually be an illusion, a constructed reality hiding a darker truth. This theory has its roots in subtle inconsistencies throughout the series, moments that don't quite add up if you're paying close attention. The remarkable luck of our heroes, the way they always seem to escape certain death at the last moment, the convenient timing of rescues and revelations. What if these aren't just plot conveniences but clues to something deeper? Consider the possibility that at some point in the series, perhaps as early as Season 1's ending, our core group actually died or fell into a coma-like state, and everything we've seen since has been either an afterlife, a shared dream, or a simulation created by Hawkins' lab or another entity. It sounds extreme, but let's look at the evidence. The Upside Down, as we've discussed, seems to be frozen in time on November 6, 1983. But time passes normally for our characters. They age, they grow, they move through seasons and years. How can time be frozen in one dimension while it flows normally in another that's supposedly connected, unless the normal world we're watching isn't real time but rather a constructed narrative, a story being told or lived at a different pace than reality? Think about how many times characters should have died but didn't. Hopper's survival of the explosion at Starcourt was explained, but barely. The odds of Max surviving Vecna's attack were astronomically low. The number of times the kids have faced down monsters and emerged with minor injuries strains credibility. What if the reason they survive is because they're in a reality where death doesn't work the way it should? Where the rules are different because the rules are being written by something or someone with an interest in keeping them alive. There's also the matter of parents in this series. They're remarkably absent or oblivious. Joyce is the exception, but even she often seems to operate on different information than she should have. Karen Wheeler never quite questions why her children keep coming home bruised and terrified. Steve's parents are never shown. The adults exist in a kind of fog, aware but not aware, present but not present. What if that's because they're not real in the way the kids are? What if the kids are the only real consciousnesses in this constructed reality and everyone else is more like NPCs, background characters filling roles? The theory takes a darker turn when we consider who might be constructing this reality and why. One possibility is Hawkins' lab. Perhaps the experiments never ended. Perhaps Brenner didn't die. Or perhaps his death was part of the simulation. The lab could be running an elaborate scenario using psychic abilities to create a shared dreamscape, testing the children's responses to escalating threats to gather data on psychic development and trauma response. Another possibility is that the Mind Flayer itself has already won. Our heroes are trapped in a psychic prison, living out their hopes and fears, while the Mind Flayer feeds on their emotions, their energy, their consciousness. Every victory they think they've won has been illusory, a way to generate hope that can then be crushed, creating a more potent form of emotional energy for the entity to consume. They're not fighting the Mind Flayer, they're inside it, and the fight is the point. Or perhaps the simulation is benevolent, created by Eleven or Will in a desperate attempt to save their friends. Maybe the group actually died in season 1 or 2, and Eleven, in her grief and guilt, created this psychic reality where they could continue to exist, where she could continue to protect them. She's trapped herself in a lie because the truth, that her friends are gone, is too painful to bear. Every season is her trying to give them a happy ending, trying to find a scenario where everyone survives and lives happily ever after. The evidence for this includes Eleven's season 1 death. She vanished when she defeated the Demogorgon. What if she didn't come back? What if everything after that moment is her dying dream, her consciousness creating a world where she gets a second chance, where she gets to have friends and a family and love? It would explain the dreamlike quality some scenes have, the way time seems flexible, the way consequences sometimes don't quite stick the way they should. Look at how each season escalates the threat. Season 1 was local, contained. Season 2 expanded but remained manageable. Season 3 raised the stakes but kept them within bounds. Season 4 went cosmic, with revelations about the nature of the Upside Down and threats that span time and space. The escalation follows the pattern of a dream, where each iteration has to be more intense because you're building tolerance, needing stronger stimuli to maintain the same level of engagement. The relationships in the show also support this theory. Mike and Eleven's love story is almost too perfect, too central. It's the kind of relationship that exists in fantasies, in stories we tell ourselves about how love should be. Max and Lucas, Dustin and Susie, Steve's journey from bully to beloved older brother figure. These arcs are emotionally satisfying in a way that real life rarely is. What if they're satisfying because they're designed to be, because someone is crafting this narrative to hit specific emotional beats? Season 5, in this theory, would force a choice. Do the characters accept the truth and let go of the constructed reality, facing whatever horrible fate awaits them in the real world? Or do they choose the comfortable lie, deciding that a happy life in a simulation is better than a tragic truth in reality? It's the ultimate coming-of-age dilemma. Accepting the loss of innocence, the loss of the safe world you thought you lived in, growing up into a harsher reality. Imagine the revelation playing out. Maybe 11 glitches, sees something she shouldn't, a crack in the facade. She starts to notice the inconsistencies, starts to question. She pulls at the thread, and reality begins to unravel. The other characters fight her, insist everything is fine, because accepting the truth means accepting death or loss or some other unbearable outcome. She has to choose between the people she loves and the truth, between letting them live in peace and setting them free into whatever comes next. Or perhaps it's Will who figures it out, his sensitivity to other dimensions allowing him to perceive the boundaries of the simulation. He realizes they're not in the real Hawkins, that the Upside Down isn't the threat, it's the exit. The dark tunnels, the strange corridors, the monsters. They're not trying to hurt them, they're trying to wake them up, trying to break through the simulation and free them. Every time they close a gate, they're actually reinforcing their prison. The happy ending that isn't theory is fundamentally about the nature of reality and choice. If you could live in a perfect simulation where everyone you love survives and flourishes, would you choose that over a harsh reality where loss is inevitable? Is a beautiful lie better than an ugly truth? These are questions without easy answers, questions that go to the heart of what it means to be human. There's also a metatextual element to this theory. Stranger Things is a show about nostalgia, about longing for a simpler time. The 1980s setting isn't just aesthetic, it's thematic, representing a world before the internet, before constant connectivity, before certain losses of innocence. What if the show itself is aware of this and the final season comments on our collective desire to retreat into comforting fictions rather than face difficult realities? The audience watches Stranger Things as escapism, as a retreat into a simpler world where kids on bikes can save the day and love conquers all. If the show ends by revealing that its own characters have been engaged in the same escapism, retreating into a constructed reality to avoid harsh truths, it creates a powerful parallel. We're watching characters do what we're doing, seeking comfort in fiction, and if they have to choose to leave their fiction behind to grow up, maybe the show is suggesting we need to do the same. But maybe there's a third option, a synthesis. Maybe the point isn't that the simulation is false, therefore bad, but that it's false, and that's okay. Maybe 11 or whoever created this reality did so not as a trap, but as a gift, a space where healing could happen, where trauma could be processed safely. And once that healing is complete, the characters can choose to return to reality, not because the simulation is wrong, but because they're finally strong enough to face what they ran from. In this interpretation, Season 5 would be about voluntary emergence. The characters would discover the truth, but wouldn't be forced out. They'd be given a choice. Stay in the safe world or re-enter the real one, knowing what they know, carrying with them the strength and connections they built in the in-between space. The upside down becomes a metaphor for processing trauma. A dark reflection where you confront your fears in a controlled environment until you're ready to bring those lessons back to reality. The final scene could be ambiguous. Our heroes wake up in hospital beds, or in Hawkins' lab chambers, or simply open their eyes to a world that's familiar but subtly different. We never quite know if they're really back or if they've moved to yet another layer of simulation. The point isn't to resolve the question definitively, but to leave us thinking about reality, choice, and what makes a life meaningful, the objective truth of it or the subjective experience of it. As you drift into sleep now, think about the worlds you escape into, in shows, in books, in dreams. Think about how sometimes fiction feels more real than reality, how the people in stories can matter more than people you pass on the street. Think about what Stranger Things has meant to you, the comfort it's provided, the community it's created, and ask yourself, if it turned out your favourite comfort was a kind of beautiful lie, would that make it less valuable? Or is the comfort itself the point, regardless of underlying truth? The happy ending that isn't theory reminds us that sometimes growing up means accepting that nothing is as simple as we hoped, but it also reminds us that even constructed realities, even shared fictions, have real meaning because we invest them with our emotions, our time, our love. Stranger Things, whether real, within its own universe or not, is real to us because we've made it so, and maybe that's the only reality that truly matters. Theory 6. The multiverse solution. Let us now explore a theory that embraces the infinite, the possibility that Season 5 will reveal a multiverse structure underpinning everything we've seen. This theory suggests that the Upside Down isn't a single dimension but rather a nexus point where infinite universes touch, and that our hero's ultimate solution won't be defeating evil but learning to navigate the infinite possibilities of existence. The multiverse theory has become popular in modern storytelling, but Stranger Things has been seeding hints since the beginning. Remember how Joyce's alphabet wall worked, letters lighting up to spell messages across dimensional barriers. But what if those weren't just messages from Will across one dimensional divide, but echoes from multiple Wills across multiple realities, all trying to survive, all calling out for help? What if Joyce was hearing not one son but infinite versions of her son, their cries overlapping across universes? This theory proposes that every major choice in the series creates a branch, a diverging timeline where different decisions lead to different outcomes. There's a timeline where 11 didn't open the gate in 1983, another where Barb survived, another where Hopper died at Starcourt, another where Vecna won in Season 4. Infinite branches, infinite possibilities, all existing simultaneously in the quantum foam that underlies reality. The Upside Down, in this model, isn't a corruption of our world. It's a collapsed wave function, a timeline where things went catastrophically wrong early in Earth's history. Perhaps a timeline where the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was preceded by a dimensional rift, where the extinction event was supernatural rather than natural. That dead world has been reaching out across the multiverse, trying to find living worlds to invade, to colonize, to transform into itself. It's a universe in its death throes, grabbing at anything to survive. Vecna's power, then, isn't just telepathy or mind control. It's the ability to perceive multiple timelines and to move between them. When he shows Nancy visions of the future, he might not be predicting what will happen in their timeline, but showing her what has happened in other timelines, other versions of Hawkins that have already fallen to his power. The future isn't fixed, it's plural, and Vecna has seen enough timelines to know which actions lead to which outcomes, giving him a tremendous strategic advantage. This explains his confidence, his seeming omniscience. He's not guessing what the heroes will do. He's seen other versions of them make every possible choice. He knows how they think, how they react, because he's fought infinite versions of them across infinite timelines. The only way to beat him is to do something unprecedented, something no version of the heroes has ever tried before, catching him off guard in a way he can't predict, because it hasn't happened in any timeline he's observed. Eleven's ability to piggyback into minds, demonstrated in Season 4, could be the key to accessing the multiverse. What if she's not just entering minds but entering the versions of people that exist across different timelines? When she enters Max's mind while Max is in a coma, she might be navigating through all the possible Maxes, finding the version that's most alive, most present, and pulling that version back into their timeline. It's not healing so much as replacement, swapping out a dying Max for a living one from a timeline where things went differently. The theory gets complex when we consider the implications for identity. If there are infinite versions of each character across infinite timelines, which one is the real one? Are they all equally real? When 11 pulls Max back from death, is it still their Max, or a slightly different version from a nearby timeline? Would anyone even be able to tell the difference if the swap happened at a moment of unconsciousness? This creates a beautiful paradox at the heart of identity. We like to think of ourselves as singular, unique individuals, but in a multiverse, you're not unique. You're infinite. There are versions of you making every possible choice, living every possible life. Some better, some worse, some so similar to yours that the differences are negligible, some so different you'd barely recognize yourself. The theory suggests that our attachment to singular identity is an illusion, that we're actually part of a vast probability cloud of selves spread across reality. Season 5 could explore this through character journeys. Imagine Mike meeting another version of himself from a timeline where he never met 11, where he stayed friends with Troy and became a bully like his alternate self. Or Joyce meeting a version of herself that gave up, that let grief consume her, that became a cautionary tale rather than a hero. These encounters wouldn't just be shocking, they'd be instructive, showing our characters who they might have been and thereby clarifying who they actually are. The multiverse also offers solutions to seemingly impossible problems. If someone dies in this timeline, could they be retrieved from another timeline where they survived? If Hawkins is destroyed here, could the population be evacuated to an Hawkins in a timeline where the Upside Down never emerged? These solutions sound like cheating, like avoiding consequences, but the theory suggests that's the point. In a multiverse, there are no permanent consequences because every outcome exists somewhere. Death is just a local phenomenon. But that creates a moral dilemma. If you can save someone by pulling their alternate self from another timeline, should you? You're saving someone in this timeline, but possibly dooming that other timeline by removing a key person from it. Every solution becomes a trolley problem on a cosmic scale. Save your friends here by sacrificing their alternates elsewhere, or accept loss here to preserve other timelines. It's a no-win scenario that forces characters to make impossible choices. Hopper could be central to this theory. His time in Russia might have exposed him to research into parallel dimensions. The Soviets, in their attempts to open gates and weaponize the Upside Down, might have stumbled onto multiverse theory. They might have technology that allows limited perception across timelines. Hopper might return to Hawkins not just with knowledge of the Upside Down, but with knowledge of the infinite, understanding that every decision point creates new branches, and that the fight against Vecna is actually being waged across infinite battlefields simultaneously. The climax of Season 5 could involve a convergence, multiple timelines colliding in a single moment, all the versions of our heroes from across the multiverse, all fighting their versions of Vecna, all reaching critical moments simultaneously. The barriers between timelines collapse, and suddenly you have dozens of 11s, dozens of Mikes, all in the same space, all facing down infinite Vecnas. It would be chaos, confusing, overwhelming, but also powerful, showing that even across infinite variations, certain bonds, certain friendships, certain loves remain constant. In this convergence, our heroes would have to coordinate with their alternate selves. They'd see timelines where they made better choices and timelines where they made worse ones. They'd see who they could have been and who they thankfully aren't, and they'd have to synthesize all that knowledge, all those experiences into a single, unified action that works across timelines, a solution that doesn't just save one Hawkins but prevents Vecna from succeeding in any Hawkins across the multiverse. The technical challenge of this is staggering. How do you coordinate action across timelines when each timeline has slightly different physical laws, different histories, different contexts? The answer might lie in human connection. Despite all variations, certain emotional truths remain constant. Love, friendship, sacrifice, these transcend that timeline differences. So the solution wouldn't be technical but emotional, a resonance of feeling across infinite variations that creates a harmonic capable of reshaping reality itself. This is where 11 and Will's abilities combine. 11 provides the raw power, the ability to reach across dimensional barriers and touch other minds, other timelines. Will provides the sensitivity, the ability to perceive the subtle variations between timelines and to navigate the multiverse without getting lost. Together, they become a multiversal beacon, a lighthouse guiding all versions of themselves toward a coordinated action that saves not just one world, but all worlds. The emotional climax would come when characters have to say goodbye to alternate versions of themselves, or alternate versions of their friends. Imagine Mike hugging an 11 from a timeline where she died young, giving her a moment of comfort before she fades back to her own timeline. Imagine Will meeting a version of himself that never went to the upside down, never developed his sensitivity, lived an easier but perhaps emptier life. These meetings would be bittersweet, showing not just what was, but what might have been. After the convergence, after the battle, the timelines would separate again. Each version of the heroes would return to their own reality, carrying with them knowledge of the infinite, but unable to cross over again. They'd know they're not alone, that across the multiverse, infinite versions of themselves are living infinite lives. That knowledge could be comforting or terrifying, hopeful or nihilistic, depending on how they choose to interpret it. The final scene might show our specific heroes, the ones we followed, for 5 seasons, back in Hawkins. Everything looks normal, but they're changed. They've seen beyond the veil of singular reality. When they look at each other, they see not just their friends, but infinite friends. When they make choices, they understand those choices create new branches, new timelines, new versions of themselves. They're aware of the infinite in a way most people never will be. And with that awareness comes both responsibility and freedom. Responsibility to make good choices, knowing each choice spawns new realities, and freedom from the fear of death or permanent loss, knowing that in some timeline everyone survives, everyone gets their happy ending. As you fall deeper into sleep, imagine the multiverse spreading out before you. Imagine every dream you've ever had being a window into another version of your life, another timeline where you made different choices. Imagine all the people you could have been, all the lives you could have lived. Are you the best version of yourself across all timelines? Are you the worst? Probably neither. Probably you're somewhere in the middle, one of infinite variations, all equally real, all equally you. Theory 7. The music, connection and sound as salvation. Let's drift now into a theory that's been whispered since Season 4's emotional climax. The idea that music isn't just a plot device, but the fundamental key to understanding and ultimately defeating the Upside Down. This theory proposes that sound, frequency and vibration are the true weapons against Vecna, and that Season 5 will reveal music to be a form of dimensional technology more powerful than any gate or psychic ability. The Kate Bush moment in Season 4 wasn't just emotionally resonant, it was revealing. When Max was trapped in Vecna's mental prison, music was what saved her. Not 11's powers, not weapons, not strategy, but a song that connected her to memories of happiness, of life, of love. The music created a tether to reality so strong that even Vecna's grip couldn't break it. But why? What is it about music that has this power? This theory suggests that the Upside Down and our world operate on different frequencies, like radio stations on different channels. Vecna can reach across because he's learned to modulate his frequency, to tune into our reality while remaining anchored in his own. But music, with its complex patterns of sound waves, its mathematical harmonies and emotional resonances, can disrupt his signal. It's not about the specific song, though personal connection amplifies the effect. It's about the fundamental nature of organized sound. Think about how sound works. It's vibration traveling through matter, creating patterns in the air, in water, in solid objects. Everything has a resonant frequency, the specific vibration at which an object naturally oscillates. Opera singers can shatter glass by hitting the right note because they're matching the glass's resonant frequency, causing it to vibrate so intensely it breaks apart. What if the Upside Down? What if Vecna himself has a resonant frequency? And what if music is how we find it? Throughout the series, sound has been important in ways we might not have fully appreciated. The Demogorgon was attracted to blood, yes, but also to sound. It heard Will's breathing, his movements. The Mind Flayer's approach was accompanied by that distinctive tendril sound, that organic slithering that seemed to resonate in your bones. Vecna's victims heard chiming clocks before their deaths. Sound isn't just accompanying these events, it's integral to them. The theory proposes that the Upside Down is fundamentally unstable, held together by a specific frequency or pattern of frequencies. Vecna, as its master, is the primary source of this organizing frequency. He's like a conductor, and the Upside Down is his orchestra responding to his vibrations. When he kills, when he opens gates, when he extends his influence, he's broadcasting on his frequency, imposing his pattern on reality. But what if you could broadcast a counter-frequency? What if you could introduce dissonance into his perfect harmony? Music, especially music with strong emotional associations, carries tremendous power. It's not random noise, it's organized sound, patterns and structures that our brains recognize as meaningful. And if consciousness and matter are more connected than we typically believe, then music infused with human emotion becomes a weapon capable of affecting dimensional barriers. Eddie's guitar solo in Season 4 might have been more important than anyone realised. He played Master of Puppets. And while the immediate goal was to attract demobats, the act of playing heavy metal in the Upside Down itself could have had effects nobody measured. Heavy metal is characterised by specific frequencies, by bass that you feel in your chest, by distortion that creates complex waveforms. Eddie was essentially performing acoustic warfare without knowing it, bombarding the Upside Down with organised sound that disrupted its fundamental frequency. Season 5 could reveal that each character has a song, a personal frequency that represents their strongest connection to life and love and reality. Max had Running Up That Hill. Lucas might have something different. Dustin's might be the never-ending story theme, connected to his relationship with Susie. These aren't just favourite songs, they're acoustic signatures, personal frequencies that define each individual's connection to our dimension. The theory extends to the entire group working together. What if they need to create a symphony, each person contributing their frequency, their song, their vibration? It wouldn't be about playing instruments in the traditional sense, though that might be part of it, but about achieving a harmonic convergence where all their personal frequencies align and amplify each other, creating a combined wave powerful enough to shatter Vecna's hold on reality. This is where Susie might become unexpectedly important. She's brilliant, probably understands acoustics and wave mechanics, and she's already been established as someone who loves music and performance. What if she's the one who figures out the mathematics of it all? Who calculates the exact frequencies needed? Who composes the song that will defeat Vecna? Not a literal song necessarily, but a pattern of sounds and silences, harmonies and dissonances that exploit weaknesses in the Upside Down's fundamental structure. There's scientific backing for this theory, at least metaphorically. Cymatics is the study of visible sound, showing how sound frequencies create geometric patterns in physical mediums like sand or water. Different frequencies create different patterns, some simple, some incredibly complex. The upside down's appearance, with its tentacles and vines and organic geometries, could literally be the physical manifestation of Vecna's frequency made visible. Change the frequency, change the structure. Ancient civilizations understood sound's power. Churches and temples were built with specific acoustics to create resonance and awe. Tibetan singing. Bowls are used for healing, operating on the principle that certain frequencies promote physical and mental well-being. Indigenous cultures worldwide use rhythmic drumming to induce trance states, to connect with spirits, to heal. Stranger Things could be saying that these weren't superstitions or metaphors. They were early humans stumbling onto dimensional physics, learning to manipulate reality through sound without understanding the mechanism. The Mind Flayer's hive mind might operate on a shared frequency. All the flayed individuals in Season 3 were connected, moving in coordination, sharing information instantaneously. That's not possible through normal neural connections over distance, but it's perfectly possible if they're all vibrating at the same frequency, all resonating in harmony with each other and with the Mind Flayer. They became instruments in its orchestra, their individual frequencies subsumed into its larger pattern. To defeat a hive mind operating on frequency, you need dissonance. You need individuals asserting their own frequencies, their own songs, refusing to harmonize with the imposed pattern. That's what made music so effective against Vecna. It reasserted individual identity, individual frequency, breaking the resonance he was trying to create. Max listening to her song was essentially tuning herself to her own frequency, making it impossible for Vecna to force her onto his. The grandfather clock, Vecna's signature symbol, takes on new meaning in this theory. Clocks are timekeepers, yes, but they're also metronomes, devices that create regular rhythmic pulses. The ticking of a clock is a frequency, a pattern imposed on time itself. When Vecna's victims heard the clock chiming, they were hearing his frequency becoming dominant, his rhythm overriding their own. 4 chimes marking the 4 kills he needed to create the gates, not just symbolic but acoustic, each chime a frequency pulse that tore reality a little more. Season 5's climax might involve creating a counterclock, an anti-frequency that doesn't just stop Vecna's rhythm, but reverses it. Imagine all our heroes, each contributing their personal frequency, their song, and those frequencies combining not into a simple chord, but into a complex waveform that perfectly cancels out Vecna's signal. It would be like noise-cancelling headphones on a dimensional scale, 2 waves meeting and destroying each other, leaving silence, leaving peace. But there's danger in this approach. If you cancel out Vecna's frequency completely, you might destabilize the upside down so catastrophically that it doesn't just close, it implodes and takes our dimension with it. The 2 dimensions have been connected for so long that they've become entangled. Separate them too violently and both might suffer. So the solution might not be to destroy Vecna's frequency but to transform it, to introduce harmonics that shift it from a destructive pattern to a neutral or even beneficial one. This is where the theory becomes almost spiritual. What if the goal isn't to destroy the upside down, but to heal it, to change its frequency from one of death and decay to one that can support life? Music has that power. It can transform emotions, can take sadness and make it beautiful, can take chaos and make it dance. If our heroes can figure out the right combination of frequencies, the right song, they might be able to literally sing the upside down into a new form. The final battle wouldn't be fought with powers or weapons, but with pure sound. Our heroes standing in a circle, each singing or playing their part, their individual frequencies weaving together into something larger. The upside down responding, its structures vibrating, beginning to resonate with this new pattern. Vecna fighting it, trying to impose his frequency, but finding himself drowned out by the harmony of human connection, human love, human hope, translated into acoustic form. And maybe in the end, one frequency matters most. Not the loudest or the most complex, but the truest. Maybe it's Mike's voice saying Eleven's name. Maybe it's Joyce humming the song she sang to Will as a baby. Maybe it's the simple sound of friends laughing together. That specific frequency that only exists when people who love each other share joy. That sound, impossible to fake, impossible to corrupt, pure in a way that Vecna's millennia of hatred can never match. That might be the frequency that saves everything. As you rest now, pay attention to the sounds around you, the hum of electronics, the rhythm of your breathing, the distant sounds of the world continuing outside your window. Everything is vibration, everything is frequency. You are a song being sung by the universe, a unique pattern of vibrations that will never be exactly replicated. And somewhere in the infinite space of possible frequencies, there's a song that's perfectly, uniquely yours, a sound that represents everything you are and everything you could be. The music connection theory reminds us that sometimes the most powerful forces aren't loud or violent. They're harmonious, organized, beautiful. It suggests that love and connection aren't just emotions, but frequencies we generate. Waves we send out into the world that resonate with others, creating harmonies that can reshape reality itself. And maybe, just maybe, that's not fiction at all. Theory 8. The government conspiracy that goes deeper. Let us move now into shadows and secrets, into a theory that suggests Hawkins' lab was never just one rogue facility, but part of a vast government conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of power. This theory proposes that everything we've seen, every gate opened, every monster released, every child experimented on, was not an accident or the work of isolated scientists, but a deliberate program with goals we're only beginning to understand. Dr. Brenner wasn't working alone, and he wasn't even the architect of what happened at Hawkins' lab. He was middle management, implementing a program designed at much higher levels of government, possibly involving agencies we've never seen mentioned in the show. The CIA, the NSA, possibly even the White House itself. All aware of the upside down, all participating in research designed to weaponize it. Consider the resources Hawkins' lab had at its disposal. The facility was massive, well-funded, operating for years with apparent immunity from oversight. When things went wrong, when the gate opened, when people died, there were no investigations, no congressional hearings, no media exposure. Every incident was covered up seamlessly, witnesses silenced or discredited, evidence erased. That level of control requires power at the highest levels. The theory suggests that the Cold War backdrop isn't just setting but central plot. The United States and Soviet Union were locked in an arms race, each trying to achieve technological superiority that would end the stalemate. Nuclear weapons reached a point of mutual assured destruction. Neither side could use them without ensuring their own annihilation. So both superpowers began looking for alternative weapons, alternative advantages, and both discovered the upside down. What if there's a shadowy group within the US government operating above congressional oversight that learned about other dimensions in the 1950s or earlier? Perhaps through theoretical physics, perhaps through accidental discovery, perhaps through recovered alien technology. The source doesn't matter as much as the response. They realized immediately that dimensional technology could be the ultimate weapon, making nuclear arms obsolete. Control over dimensions would mean control over reality itself. Hawkins' lab wasn't the first facility to investigate this. It might not even be the only active facility. The theory proposes that there's a network of similar installations across the country, each conducting different experiments, each approaching the problem from different angles. Hawkins' lab specialized in psychic children because that happened to be Dr. Brenner's expertise, and because Terry Ives' pregnancy made her an ideal test subject. But other facilities might be pursuing different methods, technology-based gates, chemical routes to dimensional access, biological experiments, creating hybrids. Project MK Ultra, the real CIA, program that tested mind control techniques through drugs and psychological torture, provides a template. MK Ultra was far-reaching, involved universities and hospitals across the country, operated without informed consent, and remained classified for decades. What if there's a Project MK Ultra for dimensional research? Call it Project Gateway or Project Threshold or Project Looking Glass, the name doesn't matter. What matters is the scope. Dozens of facilities, thousands of test subjects, unlimited black budget funding, and absolutely no accountability. The men in suits we occasionally see aren't just government agents doing damage control. They're operatives for this shadow organisation, ensuring that evidence of the upside down remains compartmentalised. that only those with appropriate clearance know the full picture. Even the local authorities, Chief Hopper initially, the state police, the military units that occasionally appear, they're given cover stories, partial truths, enough information to do their jobs, but not enough to understand what they're really part of. Season 5 could reveal that the Reagan administration knows everything. President Reagan himself might have been briefed on the upside down, might have made decisions about how to handle the Hawkins situation. This would fit historically. Reagan was obsessed with the Soviet threat, spent heavily on defense, pursued the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, despite its astronomical costs and questionable feasibility. What if SDI wasn't really about missile defense but about dimensional defense, creating a barrier to prevent Soviet intrusion from the upside down? The theory gets darker when we consider that the government might not want to close the upside down permanently. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it's killed people, but it's also the ultimate strategic resource. Imagine military applications, soldiers who can appear anywhere through dimensional gates, weapons that attack from other dimensions where conventional defences are useless, energy sources that tap into the upside down's strange physics. The potential is staggering, and governments don't typically walk away from that kind of potential just because it's risky. So when 11 closes gates, when our heroes fight to seal the dimensions apart, they might not just be fighting Vecna. They might be fighting their own government, which sees their heroism as obstruction of vital national security research. Season 5 could feature government forces actively working against our heroes, not because they're evil, but because they genuinely believe that controlling the upside down is essential to winning the Cold War and protecting America. This creates an impossible moral situation. Our heroes want to protect their town, their friends, their families. The government wants to protect the nation, to ensure America's survival in a dangerous world. Both are motivated by love of individuals versus love of country. How do you resolve that? Who's right when both sides are trying to protect something precious? There might be a shadow president, someone who holds the real power behind the elected officials we see, someone who's been in position for decades, spanning multiple administrations, always pulling strings, always ensuring that dimensional research continues regardless of who sits in the Oval Office. This person would be the ultimate antagonist. Not a monster from another dimension, but a human being who's decided that the ends justify the means, that any sacrifice is acceptable if it secures American dominance. The theory extends to international cooperation that we haven't seen yet. What if the US and Soviet Union have a secret agreement about the upside down? Publicly, they're enemies, but secretly, they're sharing information, coordinating research, making sure neither side gets too far ahead. It's like nuclear non-proliferation treaties, but for dimensional access. Both sides realise that if either achieves complete control, the balance of power shifts irreversibly. So they maintain a tense cooperation, competing, but also ensuring neither destroys the world in the process. Murray's role becomes more important here. He's been investigating government conspiracies for years, dismissed as crazy, but he's been right about more than anyone realised. His contacts, his research, his paranoia. It's all been leading to this, to the moment when he can prove that the conspiracy isn't just in Hawkins but goes all the way to the top. Season 5 might see Murray coordinating with our heroes to expose the truth, to force transparency, to end the shadow government's control over dimensional research. But exposure comes with costs. If the public learns about the upside down, there would be mass panic. Religious groups might see it as hell, apocalyptic cults might form, the economy could crash as people lose faith in government and reality itself. The Shadow organisation has kept this secret not just for strategic advantage, but because they genuinely believe the public can't handle the truth, and they might be right. Sometimes the conspiracy exists because the alternative, mass knowledge, would be worse. Owens, the government agent who seemed sympathetic in seasons 2 to 4, might be more complicated than he appeared. What if he's been playing both sides, genuinely caring about the kids, but also serving the Shadow organisation's interests? He's tried to help, but within boundaries set by his superiors. Season 5 could force him to choose. Follow orders or help the kids, serve the system or break it, protect the conspiracy or expose it. Whatever he chooses, people will get hurt. The ultimate conspiracy might be that there is no ultimate conspiracy. just a lot of people making bad decisions for good reasons, each acting on incomplete information, each believing they're doing what's right. The government isn't monolithic. It's made of individuals, each with their own morals, their own fears, their own agendas. Some want to weaponize the upside down, some want to study it, some want to seal it forever, some want to exploit it commercially, and they're all working at cross purposes, creating chaos that looks like conspiracy but is really just human nature at scale. Season 5's resolution might involve not defeating the government, but changing its mind. Convincing those in power that the upside down can't be controlled, that attempting to weaponize it will only lead to destruction. It's the same lesson humanity has learned with every new technology: atomic power, chemical weapons, biological warfare. The temptation is always to use it before the enemy does, but the reality is that some powers can't be controlled, and trying only ensures that everyone loses. Imagine a scene where Eleven and her friends sit across from government officials in a secure room somewhere in Washington. The officials present their case. We need this, America needs this, the world needs this. Closing the upside down means letting the Soviets win, and Eleven responds, some victories aren't worth the cost. Some powers we're not meant to have. Some doors should stay closed, and somehow, impossibly, she convinces them, not through threats or powers, but through moral clarity, through the wisdom of someone who's seen firsthand what happens when people play with forces they don't understand. The government conspiracy theory is ultimately about power and responsibility. It asks who should make decisions that affect everyone, the elected officials we see or the shadowy operatives we don't. The democratic process that's slow and messy, or the efficient technocrats who get things done. There are no easy answers, only trade-offs, only compromises that leave everyone slightly dissatisfied, but keep the world running. As sleep deepens around you, think about all the things you don't know, the secrets kept from you for your own good or for others' advantage. Think about how much of your world is decided by people you've never met, in rooms you'll never enter, based on information you'll never access. That can be frightening, yes, but it can also be oddly peaceful. The understanding that you don't have to control everything, that someone else is watching, worrying, deciding. Sometimes conspiracy isn't evil. Sometimes it's just burden that others carry so you don't have to. The government conspiracy theory reminds us that institutions are made of people, and people are complicated. There are no villains, just humans trying their best with imperfect information and conflicting loyalties. And maybe the real conspiracy is that there's no grand plan, just improvisation all the way up. Theory 9. The parent generation's hidden past. Now we drift into family history, into a theory that suggests the parents of Hawkins aren't as ignorant as they seem. This theory proposes that Joyce, Hopper, Karen Wheeler, and other adults in town have their own buried history with the strange occurrences in Hawkins, that they knew something was wrong long before their children stumbled into danger, and that Season 5 will reveal secrets the parent generation has been keeping for decades. Think about how the adults respond to the strange events throughout the series. There's denial, yes, but also a familiarity, as if part of them recognises what's happening, even if they can't consciously admit it. Joyce immediately believes Will is alive and communicating through lights, an insane leap of logic, unless some part of her has been prepared for weirdness in Hawkins. Hopper investigates Hawkins' lab with a personal intensity that goes beyond professional duty. Karen Wheeler senses something wrong with her children but can't quite identify what. These aren't just parental instincts, they're echoes of something deeper. The theory suggests that Hawkins has a cycle, that strange events have been occurring for much longer than we realise, and that the current parent generation was affected by a previous cycle. Maybe in the 1950s when they were children, or the 1960s when they were teenagers, something happened in Hawkins. Not as catastrophic as what we've seen in the show, but strange enough to leave marks, to create collective trauma that the town unconsciously suppressed. Hopper's daughter Sarah died of cancer, but what if there's more to that story? What if Sarah was exposed to something from Hawkins' lab? Something that caused her illness. Hopper might have investigated, might have gotten close to the truth, but been warned off or bought off, with medical care for Sarah. After she died, he could have made a deal with the lab. he'd stay quiet about what he suspected if they left his family alone. That guilt, that compromise, would explain his drinking, his depression, his feeling that he's failed at the most fundamental level. Joyce's history with Hawkins' lab might be even more direct. The theory proposes that Joyce, or someone she was close to, was involved in early experiments, not as a test subject like Terry Ives, but as someone who worked there briefly, saw things that disturbed her, and left. Maybe Lonnie, her ex-husband, had connections to the lab. Maybe that's part of why their marriage failed. Joyce discovering what he was involved in, him dismissing her concerns, the breach of trust poisoning everything between them. The Wheeler family's normalcy might be facade. Ted Wheeler's obliviousness could be willful, a man who's decided he doesn't want to know what's happening in his town because knowledge would require action. Karen, though, is different. Her near affair with Billy in season 3, her restlessness, her sense that life should be more than it is. What if that's because she remembers when life was more, when Hawkins was alive with possibility and danger before everyone agreed to forget? There's a concept in psychology called social amnesia. When a community collectively forgets a traumatic event because remembering would be too painful. Entire towns have been known to suppress knowledge of industrial accidents, crimes, disasters. The trauma goes underground, manifests in depression, alcoholism, divorce, but the specific memories remain buried. Hawkins might be experiencing town-wide social amnesia, everyone dimly aware something bad happened, but unable or unwilling to access the specifics. The theory extends to Mr. Clark, the science teacher. He knows too much, is too prepared with explanations for dimensional gates and parallel worlds. He speaks about theoretical physics with the ease of someone who's thought about it extensively. What if Clark was part of the first wave of Hawkins' lab research? A young scientist in the 1960s, brilliant but naive, working on projects he didn't fully understand. When he realised what the lab was really doing, he got out, became a teacher, dedicated himself to education instead of weaponization. But the knowledge stayed with him, ready to deploy when his students needed it. This theory reframes the entire series. The kids aren't discovering something new. They're rediscovering something their parents found and buried. The cycle is repeating because it was never properly resolved. The parents tried to run from Hawkins' weirdness, tried to build normal lives and normal families, but you can't run from something that's in the ground, in the water, in the very structure of the town. It waits, it festers, and it emerges again in the next generation. Season 5 could feature flashback sequences showing the parents as teenagers in the late 1950s or early 1960s facing their own upside-down crisis. Not as advanced as what the current kids face. The gates weren't as developed, the threats were smaller, but real nonetheless. We'd see young Joyce as fiery and brave, young Hopper as cocky but loyal, young adults facing monsters they didn't have names for and somehow surviving, and we'd see the aftermath, the decision to forget, the agreement among survivors to never speak of it, the collective turning away from truth. This creates a powerful parallel. The current kids are living through what their parents lived through, but with a crucial difference. They're not forgetting, they're not running. They're choosing to remember, to document, to understand. They're breaking the cycle of amnesia that has plagued Hawkins for decades, and maybe that's the only way to truly end the threat, not by defeating it militarily, but by refusing to forget it exists. The confrontation between generations becomes inevitable. At some point, the kids will learn that their parents knew or should have known, and they'll feel betrayed. Why didn't you warn us? Why did you let us stumble into danger blind? And the parents will respond, "We were trying to protect you. We thought if we didn't speak of it, it would stay buried. We wanted you to have normal lives." Both sides would be right in their own way, both motivated by love, both unable to fully understand the other's perspective. There might be a specific event that everyone remembers wrong, a fire at the lab, or a contamination incident, or a child who went missing. The official story doesn't match what actually happened, but everyone's accepted the official story so thoroughly that even those who were there have convinced themselves it's true. Season 5 could feature characters recovering these suppressed memories, piecing together what really happened, discovering that the current crisis has roots going back decades. Lonnie, Joyce's ex-husband, could be more important than he seemed. What if he's still connected to Hawkins' lab, still reporting information, still compromised in ways Joyce doesn't know. His appearances have been brief, but always disruptive. Maybe he's not just a deadbeat dad, but an actual plant. Someone sent to keep tabs on Joyce and her kids because the lab knows they're important. His connection to Will's disappearance might not be coincidental, but orchestrated. The theory also explains why Hawkins attracts certain people. People with latent psychic abilities, people sensitive to dimensional anomalies, people who are drawn to places where the walls between worlds are thin. They might not know why they're drawn to Hawkins, but they end up there anyway, like moths to flame. The town is a beacon for the sensitive, which is exactly why Hawkins' lab was established there in the first place. Easy access to potential test subjects. People already attuned to what the lab was trying to study. Terry Ives wasn't randomly selected for MK Ultra experiments. She was recruited because she was already in Hawkins, already exhibiting signs of sensitivity. The same with other test subjects. The lab wasn't creating psychics from scratch. It was finding people who had natural abilities and trying to amplify them. 11 is special, not because she's unique, but because the process worked with her in ways it didn't with others. Season 5 might reveal a conspiracy of silence maintained by multiple generations. Grandparents who were young adults in the 1940s, when something first opened in Hawkins, parents who were teenagers in the 1960s when it happened again, and now the current kids in the 1980s facing the latest iteration. Each generation thought they'd ended it, thought their sacrifice and their silence would protect the next generation. But each generation only delayed the inevitable, pushed the problem forward, made it worse by letting it fester in secrecy. The resolution requires breaking that pattern. It requires the parent generation finally speaking the truth they've been hiding, sharing their knowledge and experience with their children. It requires intergenerational cooperation instead of intergenerational secrecy. Grandparents, parents, and children all working together, pooling their knowledge across decades, finally addressing the problem openly instead of hoping it will go away if ignored. Imagine a scene in the Wheeler basement, but this time with parents present. Ted Wheeler, usually checked out, suddenly speaks up about something he saw in 1963. Karen adds details she's suppressed for years. Across town, Joyce tells Will and Jonathan about what she discovered before they were born. Hopper shares with 11 the full truth about Sarah's death and his own complicity with the lab. All these confessions happening simultaneously, all these secrets finally exposed, not as betrayals but as gifts. Knowledge passed down that finally gives the kids the full picture they need to end this once and for all. The emotional weight of these revelations would be immense. Children discovering their parents are more complex than they knew, that they've carried burdens in silence for years. Parents discovering their children are braver than they ever were, willing to face what the parents ran from. And everyone realizing that secrecy and silence never protect anyone. They only ensure that each generation faces the same threats alone, without the wisdom of those who came before. As you drift deeper now, think about what your parents might not have told you. Not big dramatic secrets necessarily, but small truths they kept quiet to protect you, or because they were ashamed, or because they thought you wouldn't understand. Think about how your family's history shapes you in ways you might not fully grasp, how trauma can be inherited, how knowledge can be lost. And think about what you might not be telling the next generation, what you're keeping quiet for good reasons that might not be good reasons at all. The parent generation theory reminds us that everyone is carrying something, everyone has history they'd rather not examine, and that true family isn't about perfection, but about finally being honest with each other, no matter how late, no matter how painful. Theory 10. The hopeful ending. Reconstruction and healing. For our final theory tonight, let us consider something different from the darkness and danger we've explored. Let us consider the possibility that Season 5, despite all its threats and revelations, will ultimately be about healing, reconstruction, and hope. This theory proposes that the final message of Stranger Things isn't that we must defeat evil, but that we must learn to live with trauma, to rebuild after devastation, and to find meaning in the connections we forge through suffering. Hawkins is destroyed at the end of Season 4. The gates have opened, the town is split by rifts, and ash falls like snow. It looks apocalyptic, hopeless, like the end of everything. But what if that destruction is necessary? What if Hawkins needed to break completely before it could be rebuilt properly, without the secrets and lies and buried trauma that have been its foundation? This theory suggests that Season 5's arc isn't about closing gates or defeating Vecna. Those are means, not ends. The true arc is about transformation, about taking a community that's been built on amnesia and fear and actively reconstructing it as a place of truth and connection. The physical rebuilding of Hawkins becomes a metaphor for emotional and psychological rebuilding, both individual and collective. Consider what our characters have been through. They've faced death repeatedly, lost friends, been possessed, tortured, separated from loved ones. That's profound trauma that can't be simply forgotten once the threat ends. Previous seasons ended with apparent returns to normalcy, but that was always illusion. The trauma remained, unprocessed, waiting. Season 5 could break that pattern by acknowledging that you don't get over trauma. You learn to carry it, to integrate it into who you are, to let it shape you without defining you. Eleven's journey has always been about learning to be human. Season 5 could complete that arc, not by making her normal, she'll never be normal, but by helping her understand that being human means being scarred, being changed by experience, and finding beauty in that transformation. She'll never be the girl she might have been without Hawkins' lab, but she can be someone better, someone who's turned suffering into strength, isolation into connection, power into purpose. The theory proposes a time jump in Season 5, perhaps in the final episodes or even just the final episode. We'd see Hawkins several years later, rebuilt but different. The town has acknowledged its history, created a memorial for those who died in the earthquake, that nobody really believes was an earthquake. There's collective understanding that something strange happened, even if the full truth remains protected. The silence is broken, but the secret is managed, a middle way between total denial and catastrophic revelation. Our characters would be older. The kids would be young adults, making decisions about college, careers, relationships. Some might have left Hawkins, some stayed, but they maintain connections, coming back for visits, staying in touch, forming a family that isn't defined by blood but by shared experience. They'd all be in therapy. The theory acknowledges this explicitly because it's important. They don't just muscle through PTSD, they get professional help, learn coping mechanisms, support each other in healing. The relationships would have evolved. Mike and 11 might still be together, or they might have realised that the people you love at 14 aren't always the people you need at 20. Either outcome could be healthy, either could be portrayed as growth. Lucas and Max, Dustin and Susie, Steve finding someone who sees his worth. All these relationships could continue or end, and either way, the characters would be okay. The theory suggests that real maturity means understanding that love isn't possession, that people can matter to each other without needing to be romantically entangled, that growing apart isn't failure. And so we reach the end of our journey through theories and possibilities. We've explored time loops and multiverses, government conspiracies, and musical salvation, sacrifices, and hopeful endings. The beautiful truth is that right now, in this moment before Season 5 airs, all of these possibilities exist simultaneously. Every theory is valid because none has been proven wrong yet. This liminal space between knowing and not knowing is precious. Once we know how it ends, this particular magic will fade, but tonight, every version of the story is real. Whatever Season 5 brings, remember that stories never really end. They live on in our hearts, in our memories, in the connections we've made with others who love them too. Stranger Things has taught us that we save each other through love, through showing up, through refusing to abandon one another. Even in the darkest moments, and when you wake tomorrow, you'll carry those lessons with you, that friendship matters, that courage comes in many forms, and that there's always hope, even in the deepest darkness. Thank you for exploring these theories with me tonight. Sweet dreams, and may your hope for the final season be rewarded with an ending that honours everything this show has meant to us. Good night.